Where are you now, when our daughter has been rushed to the hospital with serious injuries? Panicking after receiving a call from the hospital while on a business trip, I contacted my husband. Our 5-year-old daughter had happily talked about having a picnic in the park with Daddy over the phone. And now, she had fallen from high playground equipment in the park and was unconscious.
Just wait a minute. I'm in the middle of a business meeting at the office.
On the other end of the phone, my husband also started to panic for some reason. Our conversation was not making sense, and both of us were confused. In the flow of the conversation, my husband mentioned a certain person's name. As soon as I heard it, the blood drained from my face. Since we both worked, our daughter, Karen, went to daycare. Despite our busy lives with work, housework, and childcare, we enjoyed our life as a family of 3, cooperating with each other. My in-laws were nice people and adored our daughter. Except for one person. Her name was Sophia, 3 years younger than me, living at her parents' house while working a temp job. So, when we visited my husband's parents' house, we often saw her.
Shall we head back? We'll come to visit again. Hey, Karen, say bye to Sophia.
Bye, Sophia. As we were leaving, Karen only glanced at my smiling sister-in-law before quickly hiding behind me.
Sorry, she's a bit shy. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it.
Even if my daughter behaved rudely, Sophia always brushed it off like this. But that was only in front of my husband or parents. Afterwards, she smiled only at my husband, saying, "Come visit again, Hugo." She didn't even glance my way as I apologized. The last Hugo sounded oddly emphasized, or is it just me overthinking? Actually, Sophia and I attended the same university. However, we didn't know each other during our student days, and I don't know much about her from that time. One thing is clear, she doesn't seem to like me much. Even this time, if my husband hadn't been there, she would have said something like, "Can't even greet properly at her age," with a hint of sarcasm. Sophia behaves normally towards me and my daughter in front of my husband or parents. But the treatment we get when we're alone with her is cold. This was evident when my daughter had a fever and was suddenly called from daycare, and I asked my mother-in-law to pick her up.
You asked our parents to pick her up again? It's a nuisance if she passes on her cold or something.
I'm sorry. I had an unavoidable meeting.
Yeah, there it is. Think everything's excused if it's for work? My mom's not young anymore, don't overburden her, okay? I'm not free either.
Indeed, we did rely on my in-laws for our daughter, but we always tried to keep it to a minimum and properly thanked them afterwards. And I've never inconvenienced Sophia, at least.
Oh, sorry. Compared to a full-time working mom with a kid, me and my retired parents must seem pretty free to you, huh?
Sophia sneered, looking at me with a twisted mouth. Nobody said that. Because she always behaved this way only in front of me and my daughter, Karen became wary of Sophia. I suppose she didn't find that amusing. It's natural to have people you don't get along with, and for me and my daughter, that was Sophia. I've tried to keep my distance from Sophia as much as possible, continuing the family relationship without causing trouble. I didn't want to complain to my husband or in-laws about Sophia and risk her bearing a grudge. Considering that, the daily sarcasm seemed trivial. That was until I had to go on a business trip out of state for 5 days due to work. During this period, my husband was supposed to take care of our daughter. My in-laws were away on a trip, so it was tough for my husband, but he was eager, saying he'd go through it. True to his word, he managed the hectic weekdays, and tomorrow was the last day of my trip. I was on the phone with Karen, who had just returned from daycare.
What are you gonna do tomorrow?
Guess what? Daddy and I are gonna have a picnic at the big park. Over the phone, I could hear my daughter excitedly talking about what she was going to do tomorrow. We'll eat lunch and I want to do the obstacle course too.
That sounds fun, honey. Mama will be back tomorrow night. Just make sure you do the obstacle course with Daddy, it can be dangerous.
After hearing my daughter's energetic reply, I ended the call. Karen looked so happy. Hugo must have been doing a great job. I decided to make my husband's favorite dishes when I got back. I thought about playing a lot with my daughter, considering she might have felt lonely. Little did I know, something like that was going to happen. I couldn't have imagined it at the time. It was the afternoon of the next day, as I was about to finish my last task at work. A colleague, with a grave look on their face, passed me a phone call. Rushing to answer, the caller was from the general hospital in our area. "Your daughter has been injured and brought in by ambulance. She's unconscious, please come immediately," they told me.
What do you mean? Where's my husband?
Confused and struggling to find words, I learned that there were no guardians at the scene of Karen's accident. A nearby parent and child had called for an ambulance. My contact information was in my daughter's belongings, so the hospital had called me. Where could Hugo have gone? I tried to contact my husband immediately. However, no matter how many times I called, he didn't answer. After explaining the situation to my boss, they told me, "Don't worry about work, go to your daughter right away." Grateful for their understanding, I hurriedly left work for the hospital. On the way back, I kept calling my husband and finally got through.
What's happening? Why are you so frantic? There's no time for that. Karen is injured and in the hospital. Where are you and what are you doing?
His voice was too calm through the phone, which made me raise my voice without realizing.
How could this happen while you were supposed to be with her?
Just wait a minute. I'm in the middle of a business meeting at the office.
What?
His unexpected reply only added to my confusion. It was a holiday today, and he was supposed to be spending it with our daughter.
You're working? What are you talking about? You said you were going to the park with Karen today.
But didn't Sophia contact you?
Hearing that name made me freeze on the spot.
Why would Sophia be involved?
Barely managing to utter those words, my husband began to realize the gravity of the situation. Regaining a bit of composure, I explained our daughter's condition and heard the full story from him. A little after our call ended yesterday. While preparing dinner, he received a call from his boss. Apparently, a big deal came through, and you're the only one who can handle it, he was told and couldn't refuse. Desperate, he tried contacting his parents, but of course, they couldn't return from their trip immediately. That's when Sophia called, seemingly perfect timing.
I heard from Mom and Dad. You got caught up with work all of a sudden? I'm free tomorrow, so I can take care of Karen.
Seemingly concerned for my troubled husband, my in-laws must have informed Sophia.
A picnic at the park? Then, I'll have to make lunch too,
she said, willingly taking on the responsibility of caring for our daughter. I'll contact Natalia, so don't worry, she said, leading him to believe I was informed. Under those circumstances, to my husband, it must have felt like a relief. But hearing the whole story, I felt a chill run down my spine.
Karen, did she resist?
I couldn't help but ask. Being alone with Sophia, who was only kind in front of her father. I'm sure my 5-year-old daughter had her suspicions.
She was crying, wanting to go with Daddy. But, since Sophia was kind enough to come over, I told her not to be selfish. I never imagined something like this would happen.
The conversation with my husband ended awkwardly, and I hung up. Upon arriving at the hospital, I was immediately directed to the ICU. Karen had fallen from high playground equipment and hit her head, still unconscious. When the doctor said, "There's no danger to her life, but she might have lasting effects," I nearly collapsed from despair. If only I had contacted Hugo one more time this morning. If only I hadn't taken on that business trip. Despite knowing there was nothing I could do about it now, those thoughts kept swirling around in my head. How much time had passed? While I was standing there dazed, my husband arrived at the hospital, and it seemed he had also contacted Sophia.
Is Karen okay? Is she safe? Hey, is she all right?
Sophia, who appeared before us, was sobbing and worried about our daughter.
I just took my eyes off her for a moment to go to the bathroom. I told her I'd be right back.
Before we could say anything, she started making excuses.
But that's just an excuse, isn't it? It's my fault for not watching her properly. I'm really sorry.
After saying what she wanted to, Sophia just cried, leaving no room for us to blame her.
Why didn't you come to the hospital sooner? I got a call from Hugo, and you're only getting here now.
I struggled to keep my voice steady, trembling with anger.
I've been looking for Karen the whole time. The park was too big, and I couldn't find her.
Considering she had been searching the vast park, it was odd that her clothes weren't dirty, and even stranger that she didn't notice the commotion when the ambulance arrived. Honestly, my only thought was, how could she? But pointing that out now would only lead to her dodging the issue.
Hugo said he told you to contact me, didn't he? I haven't heard anything? Well, I thought, since you were busy with work, I didn't want to bother you.
Watching Sophia choke up her words and act as if she was afraid of me, my anger only grew.
Hey, calm down, Natalia. She's already feeling sorry, and it wasn't on purpose. Don't be too hard on Sophia.
My husband began to defend his sister, seemingly feeling pity for her. What? It's like I'm the bad guy here. I took a deep breath and simply said, okay. Thinking she had been forgiven, Sophia repeated I'm sorry, covered her face with her hands, and started to sob again. But I didn't miss it. The moment she brought her hands to her face, Sophia glanced at me and quietly smirked. After Sophia left, I confronted my husband.
Do you really believe what Sophia said? Do you truly think she was watching Karen properly?
What do you mean?
I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I saw it, for a moment she...
Calm down. Natalia, you're probably just tired. I know you want to blame someone, but Sophia didn't mean any harm. He was interrupted by the doctor coming out of the treatment room. Hearing your daughter has regained consciousness brought tears of relief to my eyes. Karen could speak, but her memory of the events leading up to and following the injury was hazy.
Karen, do you understand? It's Mom.
Mom. Where am I? My head hurts. This was supposed to be a fun day. Seeing my daughter lying in bed made me feel sorry for her all over again. You went to play with Sophia, but then you got hurt and came here. It's all okay now. Sophia. Is Sophia here? No, she's not here. Karen, what did you do today with her? I forgot. After that, she stopped talking, pulled the blanket over her head, and started to shiver. It was a gesture Karen always made when she was afraid of something. Is she afraid of Sophia? Did she do something to her? Because of her memory issues, my daughter was scheduled to stay in the hospital for a few days for tests. On the way home, I tried telling my husband, Karen seems to be afraid of Sophia, but he dismissed it the same way as before, saying I was overthinking it. If only there was some evidence, it might convince him to keep Karen away from Sophia. Without any belief from him, I needed evidence of Sophia's true nature to show my husband, for our daughter's sake. Later, I reached out to a junior from my college days. She was part of the same circle as Sophia back then and knew her well. She always had to be number one, a troublesome kid. Friends? As if she could have any. With a liar like that, the disdainful voice of my junior, clearly fed up, is something I won't forget anytime soon. From her, I got Sophia's social media account information. Furthermore, I checked the contents of the cell phone my daughter loves to use for kids. Lately, whenever we go out, Karen always carries this phone with her, capturing videos of the scenery and conversations with people she's with. It's become her latest craze. There might be evidence in here of Sophia treating my daughter coldly, that would be a real find. That's what I thought, lightly. Until I saw the videos recorded on it. To put it bluntly, my suspicions were confirmed. But it wasn't just about exposing her true nature anymore. On the third day of my daughter's hospitalization. On a holiday morning, my husband and I visited his parents' house, and we arranged for them to go visit our daughter in the hospital with him. Using the excuse that it would be bothersome to go to the hospital in a large group, I stayed behind. In the living room, Sophia was leisurely sipping coffee.
Hello, Natalia. How's Karen since then?
She's much better.
She might be able to leave the hospital soon.
That's good to hear. Sophia, with her eyebrows furrowed in an exaggerated, theatrical voice, feigned relief. What's good about it? Which mouth of yours is saying that? As usual, Sophia plays the part of the good sister-in-law in front of the parents and my husband. I matched her act, putting on my best kind sister-in-law performance.
Well, we're off to the hospital then,
said my husband as the three of them left the house, and both Sophia and I waved them off with a smile. Once it was just the two of us, as expected, Sophia's attitude changed completely.
What do you want? You didn't stay to make small talk, did you?
I faced her squarely, resting her cheek in her hand, clearly annoyed.
Could you apologize to Karen? And I want you to take responsibility for what happened this time.
Huh? What's that supposed to mean?
It's your daughter who's at fault for not following instructions and acting on her own, isn't it? And you think you can keep up that lie forever?
I confronted Sophia with copies of her social media posts. They included a post saying, "Woke up early to make this for my boyfriend today," accompanied by a photo of Sophia happily sharing a lunchbox with a man. I also showed her all the posts from that day, detailing shopping and dinner outings.
This was the day you were supposed to be looking after Karen. You left her in the park to go on a date with your boyfriend.
The story of her searching for my daughter all along was a fabrication, evidenced by these photos. As Sophia looked over each photo, her expression darkened for a moment before she scoffed and tossed the documents aside.
What's this supposed to prove? The date on a post can be changed with settings, you know?
Indeed, as Sophia said, the evidence might not be conclusive. People often deliberately change the timeline of their posts to prevent their personal information and private life from being fully exposed.
This boyfriend of yours, he's an old circle friend, isn't he? I heard from my junior. Wow, you went out of your way to contact someone just to dig up dirt on me. You must be really bored.
Sophia laughed mockingly at me, clearly showing no remorse. Such an attitude of belittlement.
Whether the post date and the actual photo-taking day match, we can find out by checking with this guy through my junior. So what if I have a boyfriend and went to the park with him?
What's wrong with that?
So you admit to babysitting while on a date? Who I ask to help babysit is my business, isn't it?
With that selfish remark, Sophia turned away. So, in the end, you want to say it's Karen's fault for not following instructions, not yours at all? Confirming that in my mind, I silently nodded.
Anyway, no matter what you say, my parents and brother won't believe you. So, you're planning to align your story with your boyfriend and erase the posts to cover it up?
I suppose you would do that.
No need for such tricks. It's obvious they'll believe me, a family member, over someone else like you.
Sophia said this with a face full of conviction, sure of her victory. But her ability to maintain that attitude ended there.
I think they'll believe this,
I said as I pulled out my cell phone and played one video.
What's this?
Upon hearing the audio from the video, Sophia's face, previously confident, turned to shock as she stared at the screen. What was shown was the truth of that day, recorded by my daughter. The video captured the surrounding scenery and, clearly, Sophia's voice berating my daughter repeatedly. "Stop fussing over flowers and hurry up. You're so slow," Sophia yelled. Then came Karen's trembling voice, "I'm sorry." Sophia also filled my daughter's head with insults about me and threatened her if she dared to talk back, "Shut up. If you talk back again, I'll leave you behind." The footage that followed only showed Karen's feet walking slowly, likely too scared to even look up at Sophia. After a while, the video showed Sophia rushing off to a man, laying out a leisure sheet, and starting to eat without paying any mind to my daughter. When Karen tried to eat some side dishes, Sophia snapped, "Don't touch it, it's dirty. It wasn't made for you," pushing Karen's hand away. Then, as if she had an idea, Sophia smiled at Karen, "Hey, do you want to go back to your mom and dad?" Upon Karen's nod, Sophia suggested, "Let's play a game then. If you can get to the top of that playground equipment alone, I'll take you home." Pointing to the park's largest playground structure. The video ended as Karen headed towards it. When my husband and I reviewed this footage yesterday, I couldn't count how many times I cried. After watching all the videos, Sophia was trembling, but soon she slammed the table forcefully and stood up.
What is this? Are you threatening me with a child's video? You're insane.
You're trying to pin this on me and Hugo, making it seem like you knew Karen would get hurt.
It's just your daughter who was stupid enough to fall for it.
In a fit of rage, Sophia snatched the cell phone from me and, unbelievably, smashed it against the wall. The screen shattered, and the internals were exposed, clearly beyond repair. With a face red with anger and breathing heavily, Sophia smirked.
Now you have no evidence. Serves you right.
Her expression was the epitome of evil. But to me, her attitude felt almost comforting. Yes, keep yelling. Show your true, vile nature even more. I was afraid my heart would be filled with darkness if I let my guard down. So, before that happened, I decided to stop her. She admit to leaving Karen in danger knowingly, Hugo? I said, pulling out a second cell phone from my pocket. Pressing the speaker button, the enraged voices of my in-laws and husband were heard.
Wait. Hugo, Dad, Mom. Why?
I've had the phone on this whole time. They've been listening to everything. And you'll be paying for the phone you broke. It's mine, after all.
But
what Sophia didn't know was that the video she saw was a copy. The original was safely with my husband.
There's no way I'd bring our daughter's important phone here. I suspected you might do something, but I didn't think you'd smash it. It was just a joke. I didn't think Karen would take it seriously. I never imagined she'd actually climb up there.
Sophia, now pale-faced, started making excuses, her voice a mix of apologies and attempts at manipulation.
Karen fell, and I was so scared. I couldn't do anything, and when the ambulance arrived, I just ran away. I'm sorry.
Tears filled her eyes as she meekly apologized, trying to elicit sympathy. Of course, no one was falling for it anymore. Realizing she had no way out, Sophia turned her anger towards me again.
Don't look at me like that. It's all your fault. You, your daughter, my brother, my parents, you took everything from me.
Stop making ridiculous accusations.
Shut up. Just because you're a little good at your job and had a kid, everyone fusses over you. It makes me sick. You and your daughter.
As Sophia started to lash out, I was at a loss for words. Just then, at that very moment, my in-laws, who had been waiting in the car, came into the room. Thanks to my father-in-law scolding Sophia, thankfully, no hands were laid on me. I've been given permission to do as I please with her. I decided to take them up on their offer. I will be filing a police report, I declared, and my in-laws agreed without hesitation. Seeing them nod without any reluctance, Sophia began to cry for real and clung to my feet.
Wait. I understand. I'll apologize. I'll apologize to Karen. Please don't report this to the police. Please.
Those pleading eyes, looking up at me, she must have been manipulating people like this since she was a child. If you had admitted what you did from the start, I would have given you a chance to apologize. I thought to myself, looking at her as if she were trash. But now, I've lost that feeling. I will never forgive someone like you. You will face the full extent of the law. I believe this was the only time I ever treated someone with such cold disdain. I simply looked down silently at my sister-in-law, kneeling and slumped over. My memory of what happened next is vague, and I don't quite remember how we left my husband's family home. Next thing I knew, I was with my husband in our daughter's hospital room.
Mom, what happened? Are you okay?
Karen's voice finally brought me some peace. We filed the police report that very day. As a result, Sophia was subjected to legal punishment. I had thought our chances were slim since Sophia hadn't directly harmed her, but the police said the videos my daughter took and the call records I had let my husband listen to were decisive. Thanks to that evidence, they could prove Sophia had maliciously put my daughter in danger, thinking it was okay if she got hurt. Though she wouldn't be behind bars for more than a year, for someone with her princess attitude, it must have been quite a shock. My in-laws decided to disown Sophia, sold their house, and moved away, ensuring she wouldn't have a family to return to after serving her sentence. Karen, fortunately, didn't suffer any notable aftereffects and was discharged from the hospital without issue.
Grandpa, Grandma, I want this pink one.
Next spring, Karen will start elementary school. Choosing a backpack with her grandparents, she's as lively as ever today.
Women have it easy. Just claim menopause and you can skip work and chores.
My husband's words boiled my blood. I couldn't hide my fury at what he said. The changes in my body started after I turned 50. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with menopause. These 2 years, I've suffered from dizziness, palpitations, hot flashes, and various other symptoms. Even though I'm receiving treatment at the hospital, it's only providing symptom relief and not leading to a complete cure. All this time, my husband, living under the same roof, showed no understanding of my illness. Dizziness? Tiredness? Back pain?
That happens to everyone as they age. But to label it menopause and skip work to lie in bed all day?
Lucky you. As I lay unable to stand due to dizziness, these were his words. He maliciously interpreted my doctor-advised leave as skiving off for a trivial illness. He repeatedly hurled insults and sarcasm at my incurable condition. But this day was different. He looked down on me with a disdainful laugh.
If you have time to show off your illness, at least do some housework, like a wife should.
I'm Linda, 52 years old. I live with my husband, David, 3 years my senior. We met through a mutual acquaintance in our late 20s and hit it off immediately. We smoothly continued our relationship and married in our early 30s. Though we occasionally had minor quarrels, David was kind. We both worked hard and lived a peaceful life. We don't have kids, but have supported each other well as a couple. However, a few years ago, our marriage underwent significant changes. I was working full-time but am currently on leave. Due to ill health. Specifically, I started experiencing menopause symptoms in my late 40s, leading to frequent health issues. Initially, it was irregular menstrual cycles and sudden hot flashes, but the symptoms worsened over time, including severe palpitations and sleepless nights. Eventually, it even affected my mental health, causing irritability and depression. Menopause brings about various symptoms over approximately 10 years around the time of menstruation stopping. I had heard about it, but experiencing it myself was far more challenging than I imagined. My symptoms were severe, and on family advice, I started hospital treatment, but there's no cure. The doctor said menopause involves diverse symptoms, so treatment is usually symptomatic. I'm using prescribed medicine and herbal remedies, but they only temporarily alleviate symptoms. It became hard to continue working, so I took leave when I turned 50, 2 years ago. My company allows up to 3 years of leave, and soon I'll have to decide whether to return or resign. I don't want to quit, but there's no sign of my symptoms easing, so resignation looms as a frustrating reality. If I quit, I dread what David might say. Initially, David was concerned and attentive when I fell ill with menopause. He wasn't one to take the lead in household chores, but he used to care when I was unwell. I thought he was kind, but as my health issues dragged on, he started to look at me with annoyance. When I discussed taking a temporary leave from work, he didn't take it well.
I don't quite get what's up with your health, but do you really need to take leave? You're not just planning to slack off at home, right?
He said, which shocked me. Men also experience menopause, but David, despite his chronic condition, has rarely been unwell. He's always maintained good health, so he seems to view my prolonged unwellness as laziness. No matter how much I explain my symptoms, he never shows understanding, always saying, "What's the solution then? If one method doesn't work, find another." Why keep saying you can't heal? Find a way to get better. Continuing to work in my current state is tough. When I expressed my desire to take a leave of absence until my health stabilizes, David, as expected, got furious. However, when I told him that not only my boss, but also my colleagues and juniors, urged me to take a break, he reluctantly agreed, albeit with dissatisfaction. I had resolved to work harder on household chores while I was off work, but there were times when I suddenly felt unwell and couldn't even get up. Standing up made me dizzy, and even sitting down, I couldn't stop sweating, possibly due to hot flashes. Still, when I tried to force myself to vacuum, I was mercilessly struck by severe back pain. I ended up taking medication and enduring the pain, only doing household chores when I felt a bit better. But David still didn't understand.
Aren't you better yet? What's the point of going to the doctor?
As expected, he gradually started treating me coldly. Don't be so dependent all the time. If you're on leave and staying at home all day, why don't you at least finish all the household chores during the day? You can't be feeling sick from morning till night. Coming home to no greeting, dinner that's just cut and cooked, what are you doing at home? David complained more than once when he returned from work. His exasperated size and attitude were shocking to me. Over the weekend, when I was feeling ill and lying down, he yelled, "How long are you going to sleep? At least do the laundry." David's sarcasm and complaints increased day by day, and there was no more consideration or concern from him. While his terrible attitude hurt me, I also grew increasingly anxious, wondering when my symptoms would heal or if they ever would. However, it was truly a blessing that my mother-in-law, Barbara, and my sister-in-law, Emily, who live in the same town, showed understanding of my condition and occasionally offered advice. Barbara is over 80 years old but has strong legs and is a very lively person who speaks her mind. My father-in-law has already passed away, and she lives with Emily and her husband. It was Barbara and Emily who first suggested I go to the hospital and even said I should consider taking a leave of absence if my condition was too severe. I'm really grateful to them, as both my parents have already passed away, for being so caring about my menopause symptoms. One day, David told me, for Mom's birthday, we're gonna have a dinner party at our place next weekend. In David's family, it's been a tradition since his childhood to have big dinner parties for family birthdays. Since marrying him, I've participated every year. Depending on the year, we've either gone out for meals or had a party at his parents' house, but this year, we decided to have Barbara's birthday celebration at our house. Naturally, I was in charge of the cooking. Barbara and Emily were supposed to come over in the evening, and Emily's husband couldn't make it due to work. "Make sure you're in good shape for the day," David said, glaring at me sharply.
I won't tolerate it if it's like last year.
"I understand," I replied, as I could only nod in front of David's assertive attitude. The thing is, last year, I felt ill during Barbara's birthday and missed the party at my in-laws. David seemed to think he was embarrassed by this. I still vividly remember being harshly scolded by him when he returned home, which was really tough and made me cry. So this time, I want to make sure I'm in good health for the dinner party, just as David said. However, if it were a condition that could be fixed just by wanting it, I wouldn't have been suffering for years. Hoping for even a slightly better condition, I started preparing little by little. Barbara is going to be 85 on her next birthday. Wanting to show my gratitude for all she has done for me, I vowed to put my best effort into cooking dinner for everyone that day. Since we're hosting the in-laws, there's a lot to do before the day, besides meal preparation. David is somewhat prideful, so I knew he wouldn't be satisfied unless the house was cleaned from corner to corner. I took a few days to thoroughly clean the house, all the while consulting my health. David never helps with the housework, just relaxing in the living room, but I've gotten used to that. I know some younger men nowadays do housework, but in David's generation, it's considered the wife's job. I never expected him to help, since he thinks I just loaf around the house all day. The day before the party, I finished shopping for the dinner menu and went to bed early, praying that I would wake up with mild symptoms. However, on the day of the dinner party, I woke up with terrible headaches and dizziness. When I tried to get up from bed, my vision became all wobbly, and I had to close my eyes. Then, I heard the intense pounding of my heart and was struck with a headache so severe it felt like my head was being hammered. It was one of the worst symptoms I've experienced recently. Nevertheless, I somehow managed to get out of bed, only to be greeted by David's loud TSK from above. Realizing I was unable to prepare breakfast, he grabbed only his wallet and phone and headed towards the door. He said indifferently, "I'm gonna grab some food. Then, because I feel sick being around you, I'll head over to Mom's place early. Make sure you have dinner ready and greet them properly," and he left the house. Indeed, David was supposed to pick up Barbara and Emily today, but showing up so early in the morning must have been inconvenient for them. His thoughtless words hurt, but I couldn't afford to stay upset. I just drank some jelly drink and took my medicine, lying in the living room until my symptoms settled. But even in the afternoon, my condition hardly improved. The medicine eased the headache, but I felt dizzy and unsteady whenever I tried to get up. I needed to start preparing dinner soon, but I couldn't get my body to move as I wanted. I stood in the kitchen for short periods, taking breaks in between, but time was running out. Feeling desperate, I tried calling David but couldn't reach him. I sent him a message, but he didn't reply. Eventually, it was 5 p.m., still not fully ready, and David returned home with Barbara and Emily. David entered the living room and looked at me sitting on the kitchen floor with a puzzled expression. "You didn't even greet Mom and the others when they arrived. Is dinner ready?" "It's not even set up," he said, and I was at a loss for words. I had made a salad with torn leafy vegetables and tomatoes. But beyond that, I had hardly prepared anything else. Anticipating another scolding, my heart raced with anxiety, and I struggled to breathe, but I decided to apologize and explain the truth. "David, I'm sorry. This is all I could manage. I'm really sorry, but could you order something tasty for the main dish?" "I'm sorry," I said. David's face turned red, and his demeanor changed drastically.
"Don't play the sick card now. This is an important dinner, and Mom was really looking forward to it. And you're just trying to embarrass me again like last year?"
David was furiously angry, scolding me harshly. "It's not like that. I'm not trying to play the sick card."
"You are. It's pathetic that at your age, you can't even manage your own health. You're inconveniencing us all because of your issues."
David didn't listen to me and continued to berate me.
"Then why didn't you answer the phone? I sent a message saying to eat out. I even sent another email 3 minutes ago asking you to order something. Why are you so insistent on eating at home when you do nothing?"
I exploded with pent-up frustration, shouting back loudly. Each word felt like a blow to the head with a metal bat. My vision was so blurred I could hardly see David's face properly. I couldn't hear anything over my own voice and pounding heart, and I was sweating profusely from the heat. The symptoms I had been managing with medication were now coming on strong, and I regretted it a bit, but I couldn't keep silent with David. When my vision finally cleared a bit and I caught sight of David, he was standing there with his mouth agape in a foolish expression. Then our eyes met, and he glared at me, pointing his finger strongly. "What's with that tone of voice? Pretending to be sick and hiding in the house, not doing any housework, you lazy." And then snapping back when pointed out, "You're the worst. Such a wife is unfit, I'm sick of supporting you. If you can't do the housework, then let's get a divorce," he yelled loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Despite my desperate pleas, nothing seemed to affect David. After years together, the fact that David could suggest divorce without hesitation made me feel so miserable that I was on the verge of tears. I had no choice but to agree to the divorce. Just as I was about to speak my agreement, I heard light footsteps. But David, in his rage, didn't seem to notice.
"What's the big deal about menopause anyway? Being tired, having stiff shoulders, that's normal for our age. Dizziness and headaches can't be that bad if you're taking medicine. You just want to lie in bed all day, don't you?"
Then someone tapped David on the shoulder from behind. It was Emily. With an anger I had never seen before, Emily swung her right hand as David turned around, striking him hard across the cheek. David, hit by a powerful right straight from a 60-year-old woman, fell to the floor, looking up at Emily, bewildered, not understanding what had happened.
"Hey, sis! Why did you hit me all of a sudden?"
As he rubbed his cheek, puzzled, Emily glared at him sharply. "And you, what's with that attitude? Have you been treating Linda like this for years? Deciding the severity of her illness without being a doctor and berating your wife, you should be ashamed," she yelled furiously. David, always trying to look good in front of his family, had never treated me so coldly. Even when he was berating me with disdain as I suffered from dizziness, he became caring about my health and made coffee himself as soon as Emily visited. I had confided in Barbara and Emily about my illness, but never about David's behavior. I was worried that speaking ill of David, their blood relative, might make them resent me. They might not believe me, as they hadn't seen how he treated me. Even if they did believe and sympathize, I feared how David would retaliate after they confronted him. But now, seeing Emily's actions, I wondered if my thinking had been wrong.
"What do you mean? It's Mom's birthday party today, and I wanted her to enjoy it. But she ruined the dinner by not cooking. Isn't she to blame?"
David stood up and pointed at me, blaming me further. Then Barbara, who had come into the living room with Emily, glared at David.
"Are you saying Linda ruined the dinner? That's just your opinion, isn't it? From what I've heard, Linda did as much as she could despite being in pain. When she realized she couldn't finish in time, she contacted you to change the location or order something. I don't want to be celebrated by someone who's unwell. And I'm certainly not happy to be celebrated by a son who only complains after pushing everything onto his sick wife."
Barbara spoke firmly to David. Then Emily asked, "Did you just leave Linda alone when you knew she was unwell and come to our house?"
"Well, what could I have done? There are many things you could have done, like helping with housework or being considerate of her condition. Didn't I tell you to be more caring toward Linda when she first started feeling unwell? You just found it bothersome, didn't you?"
David was at a loss for words, cornered by Emily's sharp comments. It seemed Emily had told David to be more attentive to me after I started feeling unwell, but David's behavior made it clear he hadn't heeded her words. "Why do you and Mom always take her side? Menopause isn't even a real illness. Being tired or having palpitations, that happens to everyone as they age. Women who just want to be lazy call it an illness and make themselves out to be patients," David continued to justify himself. Emily sighed and began to explain.
"You might not know this, David, but I also suffered from severe menopause symptoms. It's only recently that they've settled down, but they were so bad that I quit my job 10 years ago. You're saying that a disease that forced me to quit my job isn't real?"
Hearing Emily's words, David froze, looking stunned. I had talked to Emily soon after my menopause symptoms started. She told me that she had suffered from menopause at the same age as me and had to temporarily stop working before eventually resigning. She didn't want to quit her job, but there was no sign of recovery, so after consulting with her family, she decided to prioritize her health. I knew Emily had quit her job around the age of 50, but I didn't know the reason until she told me. Thinking back, I realized that I hadn't seen her around that time. We mainly communicated by email because she couldn't meet due to her poor health.
"It was really tough back then. I thought it might never get better. But Michael, my husband, told me to quit my job and take it easy," Emily said.
Michael, Emily's husband, is 5 years younger than her. His work involves irregular hours and night shifts, so he couldn't attend the dinner. I don't see him often, but I remember him as a kind man who always asks about my health. Emily, having such a compassionate husband, desperately appealed to David.
"Linda isn't your servant, you know. Shouldn't a husband be more caring towards his wife?"
"I'm sorry, sis. I knew you were unwell back then, but I didn't realize it was for that reason."
David replied, sounding defensive. But Emily's expression remained stern.
Right now, it's not me you should be apologizing to, but Linda,
Emily stated firmly. David, looking frustrated, turned his face towards me. David loves Emily, so he generally can't go against her words. Eventually, he seemed to give in. I'm sorry. Being scolded by my sister has been a wake-up call. From now on, I'll help Linda and let's get along well, he said, looking into my eyes with a sincere tone. I thought he finally understood and felt relieved, thinking of forgiving him, when I heard, wait a moment. It was Barbara who intervened. Tired from standing, she approached the sofa with Emily's support and sat down next to me. Then, locking eyes with me, she said sternly, Linda, don't take David's words seriously. You should get a divorce quickly. What? What do you mean? I asked, surprised. Barbara began to share a past experience.
Actually, I suffered from similar symptoms at your age. There was no name for it like menopause back then. From what you've told me, I think I also had menopause. I've mentioned this before, haven't I?
I nodded slightly at Barbara's words. When Barbara was about my age, menopause wasn't widely recognized. And there were no treatments, let alone understanding from others. Barbara chuckled with a troubled smile and pointed at David.
David used to say terrible things to me when I was suffering back then. It was around the time before he married you, I believe. He was still living at home, and he would say things like hurry up and make dinner, how long will you sleep, you're the mother, stop pretending to be sick, and such unkind words.
Barbara's face looked pained, as if recalling those difficult times.
Is that true?
I asked David, wanting to believe in him. He awkwardly turned his face away without denying anything, indicating that what Barbara said was true. Barbara looked down painfully and said, my late husband, David's father, got angry at David's behavior back then and hit him. When he was severely scolded by his father, David said the exact same thing, that he had a wake-up call. Indeed, after that, David stopped saying anything to me. That's because he soon married you and moved out. But Linda, he treated you badly, didn't he? So, David hasn't changed at all. Even after decades, he has no understanding of someone else's illness. She spoke calmly, dismissing David's words as mere excuses.
No way! Just wait a minute, I won't do it anymore, believe me.
David tried to intervene, but Emily grabbed his arm to stop him.
I saw it back then too. That's why I hit you like Dad did. Remember, after Dad scolded you, you were crying and apologized to Mom, saying you wouldn't do it again, that you had a wake-up call, and that it was your fault. But now, you're doing the same thing to Linda that you did to Mom. Asking to be believed after doing the same thing twice is just too convenient. There's no way we can believe you.
Emily admonished, and David bit his lip in frustration. As he fell silent, Barbara grabbed my shoulders and said, that's why you need to divorce David and escape quickly. Otherwise, you'll continue to suffer. Now, with my daughter and me here, is your chance. If it's just the two of you, he'll never admit his faults. He might even get angry at you for embarrassing him in front of his parents. I felt sad to hear such words from his own mother. The thought of divorcing at this age was daunting, but hearing Barbara's story made me feel like I couldn't go on with David. I had endured his treatment, believing that once my symptoms eased, we could return to living happily as before. But it would likely just be a brief respite before things got worse again. I also felt rising anger at learning David had verbally abused Barbara in the past. Suppressing my ongoing dizziness, I stood up and, looking straight at David, expressed my intention to divorce. David shook off Emily's hand and shouted, "What, so everyone's against me now?" Everyone in the room looked at David with cold eyes. Faced with such gazes even from his family, David turned red with rage. "Fine, I get it. If that's what you all say, then I'll agree to the divorce," he said, angrily consenting to the divorce. The dinner party was cancelled, and Barbara and Emily went home. David stayed at a hotel. Our divorce proceeded without any dispute over property division and was finalized smoothly. Afterward, I focused on recuperating from my condition, living alone after separating from David. About half a year later, I received a call from David, whom I hadn't been in contact with at all. Since leaving him, I had moved into an apartment and was living alone, regularly visiting the hospital for my treatment. As expected, the call was filled with David's selfish demands. I had been feeling better recently without any stress, but the call from David gave me a bad feeling. He had a pre-existing condition that, according to him, worsened after our divorce and him living alone. Yet, David always boasted about perfectly managing his own health. He even used that to insult me when I was unwell, calling me lazy for not getting better sooner. Why did it get like this? You said you could manage your health perfectly, right? I retorted, although I knew the reason. David's idea of managing his health was shallow, just choosing what to eat from the meals I prepared, considering balance. He never had to cook from scratch because I always planned the meals with his health in mind. Moreover, since he never did any household chores, his living standards plummeted over the past 6 months. His diet consisted of convenience store meals and retorts, only showering, not cleaning, which inevitably led to his deteriorating health. I won't be able to live like this. That's why I want you to take care of me. It's been half a year, your illness must be cured by now, he said without any remorse. Apparently, he first turned to Emily and Barbara, but Emily was busy caring for Barbara and couldn't help. Reluctantly contacting me as a last resort, David pleaded. Though I wanted to refuse, he was, after all, my husband for many years. I thought of ignoring him, but David said, then at least come and look at the album I found in the closet. If you don't want it, I'll throw it away. I hesitated, thinking it might be old photos, including good times with David and Barbara's family. Despite being disillusioned now, our relationship was good back then, and there were photos with Barbara and Emily. I decided to go and pick out my part of the photos from our former home. The house we lived in until half a year ago was dirtier than before, possibly due to neglect. Empty convenience store meal containers were left on the table, making me frown involuntarily. Without you, I don't have time to clean. It's hard to move when I'm feeling unwell, David excused himself without being asked. He looked unexpectedly well, despite claiming to be unwell. Moreover, despite seeking care in anticipation of worsening health, what David really wanted was cleaning, laundry, and meal preparation. It seemed like he just wanted a housekeeper. After some hesitation, I replied, "You don't look injured and seem perfectly fine. Why don't you stop slacking off and take care of yourself?" At this, David narrowed his eyes displeasedly and retorted, "You know my illness affects my internal organs and nerves, right? Don't judge just by appearances. I'm really suffering, and you dare accuse me of slacking off." He spat those words out. I just stared at him coldly in response, and he started to stutter. Suddenly, David stopped. And, taking a deep breath, "I was wrong to say that to you when you were suffering. I'm truly sorry and have reflected deeply. I won't do it again, so please." Before he could finish, I firmly declined. "Sorry, but I can't take care of you. I'm still dealing with menopause myself, and I can't trust your repentance." Then, a desperate David clung to me, seemingly without any concern for how he appeared. "Please, I could be hospitalized at any time due to my worsening condition. Medication alone isn't enough, proper diet management is essential, and I'm in trouble without you. Please, I'm begging you." While David seemed genuinely remorseful, I remembered what Barbara and Emily had told me about his past actions. They say he only apologizes deeply when he wants to blame you for not forgiving him. Recalling her words, I shook my head slowly. I was already overwhelmed with my own issues and not in a position to take care of someone else. If I went back to living with and caring for David, the stress would likely exacerbate my menopause symptoms again. I couldn't go back to square one after finally starting to feel better. It's impossible. If you really need care, use a caregiving or helper service. I told him, explaining these options. I made it clear again that I couldn't provide care and had no intention of living together in the future, then returned to my life. Later, as my symptoms settled, I resumed work after a long leave of absence. I started returning to work gradually. There was a time when I contemplated resigning, but now that I need to live on my own, I have to earn my living expenses independently. Additionally, having always found fulfillment in my job, despite the break of 2 years and a few months, I found it enjoyable once I started working again. I had no intention of reconciling with David or remarrying anyone else at the moment. However, I still kept in touch with David's family, occasionally meeting them for meals. I heard that the traditional family dinners, a long-standing custom in David's family, were discontinued after this incident. Furthermore, David apparently quit his job for reasons unknown. He claimed it was to focus on his treatment, but his visit frequency to the doctor and dietary habits hadn't changed. He had some savings from early retirement, so he seemed financially stable for the time being. Nevertheless, he appeared to be living in fear of an uncertain future due to his illness. As for me, I plan to continue cherishing my health and living a fulfilling life for the rest of my days.
You know, you're younger and nicer.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Stick around a little longer.
That's what greeted me, tired from my business trip, my husband and my sister talking like that. After mocking me, I started hearing unpleasant voices. For a moment, I thought about barging in and yelling at them. But I quickly regained my composure and pulled out my smartphone. Then, I slightly opened the bedroom door and recorded decisive evidence. They were so engrossed they didn't notice.
I can't believe they underestimated me like this.
I'll never forgive this. I've been made a fool of to this extent. No need for mercy. I sent the evidence I recorded to Amelia's husband, Asher. All set, we decided to confront them at the scene. Their faces were priceless when they saw us.
Ella? What are you doing here? And why's Asher here too? Your sister-in-law told me.
At those words, Amelia glared at me. I handed her an envelope. Their faces turned pale when they saw what was inside. I'm Ella Johnson. A 33-year-old working mom, raising a son. I'm not blood-related to my parents. My mother was infertile, and they adopted me from a foster home.
Ella's such a sweet kid. Yeah, we're so lucky she became our daughter.
I'm forever grateful to my parents for accepting me like that. A year after I was adopted, my mother got pregnant with Amelia after fertility treatments. Since then, we were raised as sisters, not related by blood.
Ella, what are you planning for your future? Don't hold back on our account. Well, actually, I've got a college in mind.
After that, I moved to New York for college. I didn't return to my hometown for a job. Instead, I joined a company in New York. As a result of applying my expertise at work, I've been consistently achieving good results. I've been working hard every day for about 10 years.
Hey, Miss Johnson, can I talk to you for a sec?
One day, my boss called me in. The discussion was about recommending me for a promotion to department head. I was overjoyed and accepted, then headed back to my desk.
You're in a good mood, what's up?
Then, my husband, Lucas, approached me. Lucas is younger than me, and there was a time when I was his mentor at work. After the mentoring period, he began pursuing me actively.
I fell for you at first sight. Will you go out with me?
Swept up by his passion, I agreed to date him. Eventually, we got married after I became pregnant. And then, we had our adorable son. In the beginning, it was tough juggling work and parenting, but with Lucas's help, I started enjoying the busyness. On a day off, I went out with Lucas and our son, Charles.
Is that you, sis?
Could it be
Amelia?
At that moment, a young woman approached me. At first, I didn't recognize her, but then I realized it was Amelia.
Hey Lucas, long time no see. It's been a while, hasn't it, Amelia? Are you all out as a family? That's nice, I wish I could join.
Amelia's words made me internally groan. We came here to shop for our son today. If Amelia joined, she'd likely say, I want to go there. I want this, and we wouldn't be able to buy what we needed.
Today is a family day, just for the three of us.
So, no, you can't join. Oh, you're such a Scrooge, sis. Ignoring Amelia's tantrum, I nudged Lucas and Charles to start walking. We managed to shake her off and entered a nearby restaurant for lunch. Wow, never thought I'd run into someone here. While eating, I reminisced about the past. Our parents loved both their adopted and biological children equally. They even cherished me more, saying, having Ella brought us the baby and Ella brought us happiness. So, I always tried to care for Amelia. But it seems my feelings didn't reach her. As she grew up, she became more demanding, always saying, it's not fair, you always favor Ella.
I want what my sister has. I absolutely need it. Give it to me, sis.
It started with a keychain. Though it was something I bought with a friend, Amelia begged intensely for it, and seeing our parents troubled, I gave it to her. That must have set a precedent. After that, Amelia constantly accused me of being unfair and tried to take things from me. Fortunately, my parents were on my side and scolded her, and since we had an age gap, there was a limit to what she could take.
I'm being harassed by my sister.
Annoyed by the situation, Amelia targeted my friends next. She went around telling my friends that I bullied her because we weren't blood related. Amelia was good at pretending to cry, and my classmates started to keep their distance from me. Some even said awful things directly or harassed me.
That's not possible. Ella has always been fond of Amelia.
In the midst of this, Lily, who bought the matching keychain with me, believed in me. She even fought back against the classmates who harassed me and warned Amelia not to lie. Because of this, Amelia and Lily didn't get along. I had been living peacefully since I separated from Amelia when I went to college. However, she recently got married and started living nearby. Sighing, I lamented the unexpected encounter.
Mom, are you okay?
Then, Charles looked at me worriedly. I smiled and brushed it off.
Are you really okay? You're worried about Amelia, aren't you?
While Charles resumed eating, Lucas asked me. I then shared with him the things about Amelia I had never talked about before. She was like that, huh? Lucas and Amelia had only met a few times, like during our wedding. And I hadn't brought her up in our conversations before.
Since I don't know much about Amelia, I might not be the best person to vent to. Why don't you talk to Lily? Lily? Yeah. How about next week? I'll take care of Charles in the meantime.
I nodded at his suggestion and immediately contacted Lily. A week later.
Sorry to keep you waiting, Ella. Nothing. Sorry, too, for calling you so suddenly.
I finally got the chance to talk to Lily. When I mentioned Amelia,
I heard you ran into her and came rushing over with all the info.
Saying this, Lily pulled out a report. Internally, I was impressed. Lily was using her observational skills and acting ability as a private detective. Her skills were well known.
Wow, as expected. Let me have a look.
Then, I reviewed the contents of the report. It detailed Amelia's recent behavior. Even after I left home, it seems she continued to play the victim and did as she pleased, making me out to be the bad guy. She apparently portrayed herself as the poor sister who was mistreated by her adopted older sibling. She apparently used this to attract men, but these relationships always ended quickly.
How could she turn out like this with such good parents?
I couldn't help but feel astonished reading this.
By the way, how are things with Lucas?
Suddenly, Lily asked me that. I tilted my head but responded that everything was normal.
He's really involved in parenting, and he's even taking care of Charles today, you know?
As I replied, Lily looked conflicted. I tilted my head again.
Is something wrong? No, it's nothing. If that's the case, then it's all good.
Lily shook her head to my inquiry. We chatted for a while longer and parted with smiles. Huh, Charles? Lucas? Ella?
Oh, Mom.
On my way home, I met up with Lucas, who was holding Charles's hand.
Did you guys go out? Yeah. We thought staying at home might be boring, so we went out for a bit of shopping.
Oh really? Did you have fun? To my question, Charles nodded, looking like he wanted to say something more. He clung to me without saying anything, tilting his head.
Come on, let's head home quickly.
Although puzzled, I hurried home at Lucas's urging. All the while, Charles stayed close to me. What do you want for dinner? Oh, I'll take care of it, Lucas said, heading into the kitchen. Should I help? No, it's fine. Can you keep Charles company? He seems to have missed you. I thanked him and turned to Charles, who, with a determined look, began to whisper something to me so Lucas couldn't hear. Shocked, but resolved, I decided on a course of action. Soon after, I received a call from Lily.
Ella, I need to talk to you about Lucas.
She revealed a certain truth to me, and we decided to take action.
I wonder if you could go with him.
It happened right after that. I was approached about a business trip. When I discussed it with Lucas, he casually said, "Go for it." Could I leave Charles with my parents? That's fine, but I can look after him. You come home later than me. I'm worried. Hearing my words, he agreed, saying that's true, and with Charles's consent, we decided to leave him with my parents. After explaining the situation to my parents, they told me, leave it to us. So, I left Charles with them, feeling relieved, and headed to the business trip location. By the way, I was supposed to go with a subordinate.
That's the situation. You might need to help out. Understood.
I discussed various things with him, talking about what's to come. I told Lucas it would be a week-long trip, but the work finished early, and I decided to return in 3 days. Then, I'll leave the rest to you. After parting ways with my subordinate, we each headed to our homes. At that point, I didn't contact Lucas, but instead reached out to Lily. After receiving some advice, I made up my mind and entered the house. I'm home. I called out, but of course, there was no response. Normally, Lucas would also be at work. However, I could feel someone's presence in the house, and there were familiar shoes, including Lucas's. So, I quietly sneaked into the house. And as I expected, I heard voices from the bedroom. You're younger and nicer than Ella.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Just stay a little longer. The tired me, returning from a business trip, was greeted by such words from my husband and my sister. After being mocked, I had to start hearing unpleasant voices. For a moment, I thought about bursting in and yelling at them. But I quickly regained my composure and took out my smartphone. Then, I slightly opened the bedroom door to record decisive evidence. They were so engrossed they didn't notice.
I can't believe they underestimated me like this.
I'll never forgive this. I've been made a fool of to this extent. No need for mercy. I sent the evidence I recorded to Amelia's husband, Asher. Sorry to keep you waiting. Looks like they took the bait. Asher arrived quickly. As did Lily, whom he apparently contacted. I felt somewhat reassured by their presence. All right, shall we storm in? We got ready and decided to confront them at the scene.
What are you two doing?
The two were shocked to see us.
Ella? Why are you here? And why is Asher here too? Your sister-in-law told me.
At those words, Amelia glared at me. I handed her an envelope.
Answer my question,
Lucas demanded, looking at me. I thought it was troublesome but decided to respond.
The business trip ended in 3 days. I was accompanying her on the trip as her subordinate.
Actually, Asher, my brother-in-law, is my subordinate and Lily's younger brother. So, I was able to explain the situation to him during the trip and also managed to call Lily.
Convinced? Now, why don't you check the contents?
Lily urged with a smile. But her eyes weren't smiling, making them shudder. And then, their faces turned pale as they saw the contents.
I've collected evidence of the affair. It's well captured, isn't it?
Yes, the contents were evidence of their affair. They probably never imagined such proof would surface.
How can this be? Because I've been investigating you for some time now. What?
Actually, Lily was initially investigating Lucas for a different reason. It was for a background check on her daughter's fiancé.
What? Fiancé?
Of course, Amelia was already married to Asher, so she wasn't the fiancé. And surely my parents wouldn't investigate Lucas now.
So, you were involved with others besides me?
Yes, Lucas was not only involved with Amelia but also with a junior at the company. The junior's parents became suspicious of Lucas and coincidentally hired Lily's detective agency. When Lily saw the name, she realized it was Lucas, my husband. She suspected his betrayal and started her investigation. The investigation revealed Lucas was approaching various women, not just Amelia and the junior.
Am I not enough for you?
Lucas turned pale and trembled. Amelia, furious to learn that Lucas was involved with others.
You're hardly in a position to complain.
But when Asher spoke in a cold voice, everything suddenly went quiet. He gave Amelia a cold, stern look.
After all, you're married to me, what are you doing?
Amelia, teary-eyed, struggled to find an excuse. Lily, standing next to Asher with her arms crossed, looked stern, probably reminding Amelia of the many times she had been reprimanded. The angry expression was just like her brother's. As I thought this, I started packing.
Ella, what are you doing? I'm leaving you, Lucas, so I'm packing my things.
Lucas tentatively asked, and I firmly told him. Ignoring his pleas of wait for me and forgive me, I continued.
Let me help you with your bags.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. I'll send your things to this house, Amelia.
Asher said, carrying my luggage for me, and we left the house with a smile. As we left, they started yelling, but...
Enough already! You idiots!
Lily scolded them sharply. Instantly, they screamed in fright and fell silent. Leaving them behind, we confidently exited the house. Then I parted ways with Lily and Asher and went to my parents' house where Charles was.
Turns out, there was an affair after all.
I told my parents that Amelia and Lucas were indeed having an affair. Hearing this, they sighed deeply and consoled me with apologetic expressions.
Don't feel sad, it's not your fault.
I had already been informed by Lily about their affair. The day after she shared the information with me, she said, I can't stay silent about this, and revealed everything. Even Lily's evidence alone could have been enough for a divorce. But somewhere in my heart, I wanted to believe in Lucas. That's why I didn't divorce him until I saw it with my own eyes.
Charles, were you a good boy?
Feeling sorry for my worried parents, I changed the subject. Smiling, my parents responded.
He's just like you, a good kid. Such a sweet child.
Charles, praised by his beloved grandparents, smiled happily. I was glad I left him here.
Sorry, can I stay here for a while?
To my question, they nodded, of course. A few hours later. As we were chatting and eating the souvenirs from my business trip.
I knew you'd be here.
Amelia barged in.
It's your fault that Asher and I are getting divorced. If it weren't for you.
Amelia glared at me, yelling those words. As I hugged a frightened Charles and was about to retort.
Get out. You're no daughter of ours.
Instead, my parents yelled back at her. Her focus shifted to them.
What are you talking about? I'm your real daughter. Our daughter is only Ella. You were spoiled by your grandmother and grew up to be terrible. We can't think of you as our daughter anymore.
My parents responded in an exasperated tone to Amelia's words. Yes, Amelia's twisted nature was triggered by our grandmother. She never accepted me, the adopted child, and doted on Amelia, her biological granddaughter. As a result, Amelia disregarded our parents' warnings and used me, the adopted sister, for her advantage.
I always wanted to be real sisters with you.
I could tell that struck a nerve with Amelia.
You always act like that, thinking you're better than me just because you're not a biological child, even having a child of your own, something I couldn't do. I wanted a child with Asher too.
Amelia ranted and raved. Indeed, she had no children. But that was her own doing, as her actions with various men resulted in her being unable to have children.
You have no right to say such things to me. Shut up!
Amelia raised her hand at my words. But as I braced myself, Charles stepped in between us. This is bad, Charles might be in danger.
No, don't do this.
Before she could reach Charles, my father grabbed her hand and stopped her. Then forcibly threw her out. Watching her leave, I hugged Charles.
Don't do dangerous things like that. Sorry, I just wanted to protect Mom.
As my parents said, Charles really is a good kid. I thanked him and stroked his head. Later, Amelia reluctantly went to Lucas.
Lucas got sued for marriage fraud by the junior's parents.
Lily informed me later. Moreover, it was discovered that Lucas had been engaging in affairs during work hours. Naturally, Lucas was fired. I thought I would never see him again, but he was more persistent than I expected.
Please, Ella! Help me!
Lucas, who had been lying in wait outside the company, clung to me as I arrived at work. Even as I ignored him and tried to enter the company, he kept obstinately getting in my way.
If you're going to cling like that, why did you cheat? I know it. You're the one who approached first. Well.
Yes, Lucas was the one who approached first. That day, after I went to bed, he found Amelia's address from New Year's greeting cards and visited her, claiming it was a work call. Amelia, a stay-at-home wife, was at home and welcomed him with, "Ella was rude yesterday, wasn't she?" That's how he managed to get into her house and start their affair.
Lily confronted Amelia for me.
After returning to our respective homes, I told Lily about Amelia's visit. Knowing that Charles could have been hurt, Lily, infuriated, went after Amelia, who had been chased out. Amelia hadn't reached her house yet and was caught by Lily before she could escape. Confronted by Lily, Amelia, triggered by her trauma, spilled everything.
Did you really think I would help you?
But I was really serious about you.
What is he even talking about? If that were true, he wouldn't have cheated in the first place. While thinking about this, I was about to call the police, reaching for my smartphone.
Enough already. I'll sue you for business interference.
At that moment, Asher arrived. He pulled me towards him and once again gave Lucas a cold look.
A guy like you, we don't need in our company. What?
Actually, Asher will be the next president of this company. I joined this company due to the good relationship I've had with them for a long time. Because of my excellent performance, Asher was assigned as my subordinate. And he was training to become the next president.
You're kidding, right?
Lucas, unaware of this, looked at Asher in disbelief.
It's not a joke. Leave now.
Asher's demeanor showed no sign of reconsideration. Dejected, Lucas left. By the way, Amelia knew about Asher's upcoming role as the next president. Furthermore, it seems Amelia genuinely loved Asher.
Getting a divorce was really tough.
Asher confided. I comforted him with a pat on the shoulder. And Asher gave me a troubled smile in return. Later.
Excuse me. Yes, thank you for your hard work.
I was called in by the president.
My son owes you one. And about Lucas, it's unfortunate.
The president started discussing the matter, looking a bit conflicted. Asher, concerned about the recent events, was going to train in a subsidiary for a while. It was probably a good idea to put some physical distance between him and Amelia, considering her persistence.
So, I've been thinking about handing over the project I had planned for my son to you. Of course, the promotion to department head that was originally planned will still stand.
I felt honored by this and agreed to take on the responsibility. With this, I should be able to live comfortably even without Lucas. Since I'll be busy, my parents have agreed to look after Charles. By the way, Lucas wasn't taking care of Charles. You know, I was actually staying with my dad's parents. He had been staying with his in-laws, and it seemed they weren't too happy about it. Charles confided to me secretly one day. I vowed to myself that I wouldn't let him feel that way anymore. Fortunately, my parents, who are not biologically related to Charles, adore him as their own grandchild. With these worries gone, I'm even more motivated to work hard. It seems that Asher also managed to successfully distance himself from Amelia.
That kid is doing well in a subsidiary,
Lily told me when we had tea together. At that time, I learned about Asher's situation.
Asher has always been a hard worker. I'm sure he'll be fine. Yeah, about that. I was wondering if you could meet him sometime to show your support? I'll take care of Charles.
Surprised, I tilted my head in response. I don't mind meeting him. But from the way she said it, it sounds like she wants us to meet alone.
Well, I guess you'll understand once you meet him,
she said with a mischievous smile. I don't fully understand the situation, but I've decided to meet with Asher. Charles is being looked after by Lily, a little distance away.
I was surprised when you suddenly wanted to meet. Yes, well, I have been wondering how you've been since then. Thanks to you. It's still new to me, but I'm doing my best,
Asher said with a smile. I felt bad about the trouble caused because of Amelia, and I wanted him to be happy. As I was thinking this, Asher looked at me seriously and said,
I like you, Ella.
What?
I was taken aback by his sudden confession. Apparently, Asher has liked me for a long time. However, due to the age difference, I only saw him as a younger brother. Because of this, he had given up on me.
That's why I got together with Amelia, who said she would console me.
It seems Amelia knew that he had feelings for me. She took advantage of that knowledge to start a relationship with him. When I married Lucas, Asher completely moved on and decided to marry Amelia.
I did love Amelia. I don't know what she was thinking when she approached me, but she was a support to me.
Amelia must have really loved Asher too. That's why, among many men, she chose to marry him. But now they are divorced, and she's angry at me.
I was quite shocked when I found out about Amelia's betrayal through my sister. You've had a tough time, Asher. I'm sorry, I'm not ready for those feelings yet. Besides, I want to prioritize Charles right now. I understand. I'm not in a rush for an answer,
he said with a smile. I was touched by the loving look he gave me, and my heart skipped a beat.
Mommy, are you done talking? Yes. We're done,
I replied, turning my attention to my son Charles as he ran up to us. I lifted him up, now noticeably heavier, and he smiled happily.
Charles, I hope we can continue to be good friends. Huh? Asher, we're already friends, aren't we?
Asher, being Charles's uncle theoretically, often played with him. Therefore, Charles tilted his head in confusion, to which Asher chuckled and agreed.
We might see each other less, but I hope we can stay as close as before. Yeah.
Charles nodded with a smile, and Asher gently stroked his head. From then on, Asher made time to come and see us. He gave Charles more attention than Lucas ever did, and Charles grew quite fond of him.
Ella! Charles! Why are you here?
While we were playing in the park, a disheveled Lucas appeared. Apparently, since divorcing Asher, Amelia had been wreaking havoc daily. The two of them had paid a substantial alimony, and Lucas couldn't afford to replace the furniture and appliances Amelia had destroyed. Hence, his disheveled appearance.
You must have missed Daddy. Let's be together again, the three of us.
I don't need Daddy, Charles interrupted Lucas firmly. Lucas, taken aback, asked, You don't?
Me and Mommy, Daddy doesn't like us, right?
Well, that's not.
Mommy and I have Asher now.
So, we don't need Daddy anymore. Lucas walked away with a dejected look. And I turned back to Charles and Asher with a smile.
Charles, would you be happy if Asher became your daddy?
Yes. I'd be happy.
Charles beamed. Tears welled up in Asher's eyes.
No more tears, or you can't be a daddy.
You're right. Let me say it again. Please let me be your husband, Ella, and Charles's daddy.
I nodded with a smile. After being rejected by us, Lucas became like a soulless man and apparently quit the part-time job he was doing. Amelia, of course, was furious about this, but he just ignored her. Fed up with Lucas, Amelia left and disappeared into the night. Lucas was taken back to his in-laws' house by his former parents-in-law.
It turns out he really did love me.
I learned about Lucas from my former in-laws. When they expressed a hope for me to reconcile with Lucas if possible, I immediately responded, Charles and I already have someone who cares for us deeply. Hearing this, my former in-laws quickly gave up.
Hey, Charles, do you want to see your former dad's grandparents?
No, I don't want to see them for a while. My former in-laws, who frequently took care of Charles and didn't feel good about that, said sorry about it after learning the whole story. However, Charles seems to want to keep his distance for now. Since Lucas is at his former in-laws' house, we'll just become estranged. Because we don't need them anymore.
Asher is coming over next Saturday. Really? I have so much I want to talk to Asher, my dad.
Charles said with a smile, and I gently stroked his head. After that, Asher and I started dating. And when Asher returned from the subsidiary to the main company, we decided to move out of my parents' house. We're planning to live together as a family of 3 in our new home.
Please marry me, Ella.
Yes, I'd love to.
Soon after, I accepted Asher's proposal and we got married. My parents and Lily blessed us, saying, "May you be happy this time," and Charles was delighted, exclaiming, "I'm happy Asher is becoming my dad."
I know it's odd for me to say, but Asher will definitely make Ella happy.
Lily saw how Asher loved me and witnessed his heartbreak when things didn't work out. That's why she encouraged him to pursue me when I divorced Lucas.
I know both the good in Ella and the good in Asher. That's why I want you both to be happy.
She has always been there for me, pushing me forward. For her sake too, I must be as happy as possible.
So, let's go out for a drink to celebrate next time. Sorry, I can't do that. Why?
Lily looked puzzled, but then I smiled and gently touched my belly. Realizing what I meant, her face lit up with joy.
Could it be? I'm expecting our second child. So, I can't join you for drinks. Of course. Wow, I'm as happy as if it were my own news.
She genuinely seemed thrilled. Her smile was so infectious that I couldn't help but smile too.
Charles is excited too, saying, "I'm gonna be a big brother." Wow, that's so like Charles. He's going to be a wonderful big brother, I'm sure.
When I told Charles he was going to have a brother or sister, he was so happy he practically jumped for joy. Asher felt the same way, and once he lifted me up in his excitement, Charles scolded him, saying, "Don't strain Mom's body."
So, I want Lily to help us with naming the baby. Really? I'll think really hard about it.
Suddenly, Lily became immersed in thought about what to name the baby. Watching her, I couldn't help but smile. From now on, I want to build a home where Charles, Asher, and our unborn child can all laugh together. I swore that in my heart. I was told by my son, Henry, that his spouse, Michelle, cheated on him and even had a child with another man. I can't forgive her for cheating and tricking me like this. I'm gonna get a divorce. A month after he declared this, I got a call. "Hi, Susie, it's been a while. I'm getting discharged from the hospital tomorrow and will be coming over." Michelle's innocent voice came through the phone. I couldn't understand what she was talking about.
Huh? Aren't you and Henry divorced?
What? Divorced? Me and Henry? Oh, come on, Susie, stop joking around. That's not true. From her words, it didn't seem like Michelle was lying. But of course, I couldn't just take her word for it. Suspicious, I decided to confront Henry, who was relaxing at home.
Henry, I just got a call from Michelle, and what she's saying is completely different from what you told me.
Upon hearing this, Henry started to tremble and clammed up. My husband, Ken, who was watching the situation, thought it was odd and grabbed his baseball bat, slamming it down on the table. Thinking he was about to get hit, Henry finally started talking.
Wait, please. Don't hit me. I'll tell you everything, I promise.
I'm Susie. My husband Ken is a retired police officer, and now it's just the two of us living together. Our son, Henry, lives independently and works as a freelancer using social media. I'm not too familiar with that field, but it seems he makes a living through his illustrations. He's quite well reputed and has even been interviewed on TV. Ken, having been a cop, initially didn't understand Henry's line of work. But now, he seems to have come around to accepting it. Since retiring, Ken has mellowed out and helps around the house, something he never had time for before. We live in a house with a garden, and I was looking forward to gardening with Ken. Then, on a sunny day, as we were tending to the garden, Henry suddenly showed up. Ken and I stopped our work in surprise.
Henry, this is unexpected.
Henry was grinning. I just heard you guys having fun and wanted to check it out.
What's with that grin? Got a problem?
Ken seemed a bit embarrassed. He scowled and silently resumed weeding.
Don't be like that. So, what brings you here?
Well, I have some important news. Suddenly, Henry's expression turned serious, making me brace myself for what was to come.
Well, it's not ideal to talk while standing, so please have a seat,
I suggested. Henry and I sat side by side on a small bench in the garden. Ken seemed concerned but chose not to join in the conversation, busily continuing to pull weeds.
I'm thinking of getting married. Really? Congratulations.
I was genuinely happy for Henry's marriage. Ken, clearly surprised, stood up to look at us.
So, who is she?
Henry grinned again. Her name's Michelle. And she's actually outside our house right now.
What? Huh?
Ken and I exclaimed in unison. This was too sudden, and I wasn't prepared at all.
Hold on. I can't meet her without even putting on makeup.
It's fine. Being natural is best. Michelle is a good person, no worries. I'll go call her. Watching Henry go to call Michelle, I sighed. Looking at Ken, he seemed just as incredulous, shaking his head at me.
Well, that's just like them. Always like this. What a predicament. Well, it can't be helped. It'd leave a bad impression to send her away after bringing her here.
Soon, Michelle arrived, led by Henry. Under the afternoon sun, she looked radiant. Her clothes and mannerisms were charming, and she seemed well-raised. I felt embarrassed about my own attire, impressed as I was by Michelle. Mom, Dad, let me introduce you. This is Michelle.
Nice to meet you. I'm Michelle, Henry's girlfriend.
Thank you for coming here. Normally, we should have greeted you properly inside, not out here in the garden.
Oh, that's all right. What a lovely garden you have. So many beautiful flowers. May I help out sometime?
Michelle's eyes sparkled. Her childlike, innocent smile made me happy too. Ken also looked pleased.
Well, Henry's really lucky to have you. He might not be perfect, but please take good care of him. I also ask you to take care of him. But Henry, next time, make sure to tell us in advance.
I chided. Henry sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Actually, Michelle was only free today, and she thought it'd make things tense if we called ahead. He explained. Michelle shot Henry a look of mild disapproval.
Well, that's all right. Let's go inside for some coffee.
Sorry, we have another appointment after this. We'll let you know once we set a date for the wedding. With that, the two of them left us standing in the garden. It all happened so fast, it felt like a daydream.
What just happened? It's fine. Times are different from when we were young. They're both responsible adults, so it'll be all right. I guess so.
Despite my worries, Henry and Michelle got married without a hitch. They seemed to be doing well even after their marriage. Living not too far from us, Michelle would come to help us out whenever she had time. We'd chat and garden together, and she'd ask to learn my recipes. Ken and I grew quite fond of her, always looking out for her. There didn't seem to be any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues, and our relationship was very good. However, Michelle seemed tired. Dark circles under her eyes and slightly hollowed cheeks. One day, while eating snacks, I decided to ask her.
Michelle, you seem tired lately. I'm worried.
I've been busy with work. Michelle was hiding something. I could feel it. Ken sensed it too and spoke gently.
Michelle, don't hesitate to talk to us. We're family. It's only right to share concerns.
Michelle remained silent for a while, munching on her snacks. Then, tears started to fall from her big eyes. Actually, Henry hardly helps with any housework. I understand we're both busy with work, but it's really tough when he doesn't do anything. With that, she bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. She was too sincere to complain about Henry to us, probably bottling it all up. I hugged her gently and whispered.
I'm glad you spoke up. We'll talk to Henry, don't worry. We're on your side, Michelle. Thank you.
I immediately scolded Henry over the phone. He fumbled for words, making excuses about being busy at work.
Cut it out. Being busy is no excuse. Marriage is about supporting each other.
I understand. Henry seemed to take it to heart, and it looked like Michelle's burden was lightened. Seeing her cheerful again, I felt relieved. She's such a good person, Henry should be working hard to make her happy. A few years later, in the spring, Michelle told us she was pregnant. My husband and I were thrilled at the prospect of seeing our first grandchild, but things didn't go smoothly. Michelle suddenly fell ill and, after being examined at the hospital, was found to be in a critical condition. She was diagnosed with preterm labor and had to be hospitalized. We prayed desperately for a safe delivery. Thankfully, our prayers were answered, and Michelle gave birth safely. She had no postpartum issues, but to be cautious, she stayed in the hospital for a while and planned to spend some time at our house after being discharged. I was eager to see my grandchild, but I knew Michelle's health wasn't fully recovered. About a month after we had only made congratulatory phone calls. On a rainy day when we weren't gardening, Ken and I were watching TV. Suddenly, Henry came to our house and burst into the living room, crying out loud. Dad, Mom, I can't stay with Michelle anymore. We were both so shocked we couldn't say anything.
What do you mean? You just had a child. Why would you say that?
Exactly. Start explaining. Sniffling, Henry pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. Michelle's been acting weird for a while. She said she was visiting my parents, but she wasn't really coming here. She's been cheating. Ken and I exchanged looks of disbelief. We knew she visited us often, so Henry's words seemed hard to believe. I know I've done wrong too, but after Mom scolded me, I seriously reflected on my actions. And yet, Michelle went and had a child.
Wait, so the child Michelle gave birth to?
Henry slammed his hand on the paper on the table. It's not mine. The DNA test showed no parental relation. This is the report. Can you believe it? She tricked me, acting all innocent. Henry ranted, his anger seemingly uncontainable. Rainwater from his clothes splattered on the table and floor. I picked up the report and tried to read it, but the ink had blurred due to the rain. The report clearly stated there was no parental relation. Ken also looked at the report in disbelief. I didn't want to believe that Michelle cheated and tricked him. We had built such a good relationship with her, and I couldn't imagine her doing such a thing behind that demeanor. Ken felt the same and was visibly confused.
Can we trust this report? Shouldn't we investigate more?
I already confronted her. Her attitude changed completely. She insulted me, calling me a convenient ATM.
I can't believe that. It's true. Not just Michelle, her family blames me too. That's why freelancing is no good, they say. I reached my limit, that's why I came here.
So, what do you want to do?
I'm cutting ties with Michelle. I don't want anything to do with her family either.
You mean divorce?
Yes. I have all the evidence. I'm not at fault. Henry seemed to have made up his mind. The situation had progressed so far, there wasn't much we could do, but I wished I could talk to Michelle one more time.
All right, we'll be prepared for that.
Thanks, Mom. It means a lot. But don't contact Michelle or her family. I'll handle everything.
If that's what you've decided, do as you wish. But please, no trouble with the police.
I know. I'll be going now. Henry picked up the report, stuffed it in his pocket, and left quickly. After that, we went through some gloomy days. There would be no more Michelle helping in the garden, no more requests to teach her cooking, no seeing our grandchild. It was a saddening thought. I thought we were starting a more joyous chapter in our lives, but this felt lonely. Ken didn't say it, but he seemed lonely too, quietly weeding the garden. Then, one day, about a month into this somber routine, we got a phone call.
Hello, this is Susie.
Oh, hi Susie. It's been a while. I'm feeling much better and will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. I'll be heading your way with the baby, so please be ready. Michelle's innocent voice came through. I couldn't understand what she was talking about.
Huh? Aren't you and Henry divorced?
What? Divorced? Me and Henry? Oh, come on, Susie, stop joking. That's not possible. I was utterly confused and explained to Michelle what Henry had said. At first, Michelle was incredulous, but she got seriously angry when I mentioned the trickery accusation.
That's just ridiculous. Henry was the one who restricted me, saying not to meet other men. I followed that rule, and now he accuses me of cheating? Unforgivable.
From her words, it didn't seem like Michelle was lying. But of course, I couldn't just take her word for it.
Okay, I understand. Henry is actually at home now. I'll talk to him.
Please do. Right after I hung up the phone, Ken came back from the garden.
What's going on? A little issue. Is Henry in his room? I think so. I heard some talking.
I immediately entered Henry's room. He was on a call on his computer, but quickly shut the screen off as I walked in. What the? At least knock before you enter.
Sorry. I made some coffee. Wanna have some?
Henry seemed to sense something was off, but followed me to the living room without protest. However, there was no coffee there. Hey, there's nothing here. Just sit down. I sat Henry on the sofa and explained my phone conversation with Michelle. Henry started shaking as he listened. He refused to respond to any further questions. Ken, sensing something was off, picked up a baseball bat and slammed it on the table.
Henry! Speak up, we can't understand if you stay silent. Deny it if it's not true.
Henry remained silent, so Ken raised the bat as if to hit him. Thinking he was going to be hit, Henry finally spoke.
Wait! Don't hit me! I'll tell you everything. Please!
Hearing this, Ken lowered the bat.
All right, speak up.
Henry finally confessed.
Michelle and I haven't been getting along. I got tempted and cheated with another woman.
So, you're the one in the wrong.
I'm not to blame. Michelle ignored me, always paying more attention to you and Mom. I hated that.
Ken was furious with Henry's excuses.
That's ridiculous. You're the one who cheated. What happened to the other woman? Well, she got pregnant. But it's not like I wanted to get her pregnant. It just happened naturally.
Ken, seeing no remorse in Henry, hit him with the bat.
You fool! Do you understand what it means to have a child? What have you learned in your life?
Henry, crying from the hit, lashed out at Ken.
Shut up. You're also to blame. Always acting so high and mighty. Always criticizing everything I do. I'm fed up.
So you deceived us because you didn't want to be scolded?
Yes. I planned the pregnancy dates so it wouldn't seem odd. If things had gone well, I could have pinned it all on Michelle and left her.
Henry, defiant, revealed all his actions.
Go ahead, hit me.
I'll report it to the police. I'll even post it online. Former cop abuses son. It'll make a good story.
You can't be serious.
But it's true. That's how things work now.
You and Mom are just outdated. Please just stop interfering in my life.
Threatened with police action, Ken was unable to do anything.
Even so, you're the one who lied. How are you going to explain that?
Henry no longer listened to me.
Mom, can you just be quiet? If you make too much noise, I'll expose it all online.
But I wasn't afraid, no matter what he said. It was clear that what Henry did was unforgivable. Regardless of the era. And it was our duty as parents to teach him that.
Well, then. If that's how it is. That's right. Keep quiet and I might even share some of my earnings with you.
I'm making good money, you know. Henry grinned, thinking he could buy our silence with money. But that didn't matter to us anymore.
Unfortunately, we're satisfied with our lives. Write whatever you want on the internet. I'm going to tell Michelle and her parents.
At that, Henry suddenly panicked. He must have realized he had said too much in the heat of the moment.
Wait! You can't do that! If her parents find out, it'll be a huge problem. You can't tell them.
Ken, fed up, grasped the bat again.
Do you really think you can get away with this? It's your fault for concocting such a poor plan. Just accept it. No! I'll write everything online. I'll say it's abuse. Try it if you dare.
While Ken was dealing with Henry, I called Michelle and told her everything Henry had said. I told Michelle everything Henry had blurted out.
I can't believe it. I've decided. I'm sorry to say this to you, Susie, but I'm going to divorce Henry. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm really sorry. I'll also explain everything to your parents.
Then, I called Michelle's parents and told them everything that had happened. They were furious and wanted to have a meeting at my house the next day, so I agreed. When I told Ken, he took away Henry's computer and phone to prevent him from escaping. We watched him all night to make sure he didn't do anything strange. Henry tried to escape several times, but it was futile in front of Ken, a former police officer. The next morning, Michelle and her parents arrived. Michelle's mother agreed to take care of the baby, so they went to another room. Then the discussion began.
I'm completely shocked. Never thought he could be such a person. I'm really sorry. We spoiled him too much since he's our only son.
Anyway, Henry, explain yourself.
Michelle demanded, her face showing an anger I had never seen before. Henry, too scared to meet her gaze, mumbled something inaudibly.
Speak up. I can't hear you.
Michelle scolded. Henry then spoke louder, explaining everything. When he got to the part about the false accusation of cuckolding, Michelle's father and she both erupted in anger.
How dare you accuse our daughter of such a thing? How far will you go to disgrace her?
It's unbelievable. Susie and Ken are such good people, what a shame.
Faced with everyone's anger, Henry frantically ruffled his hair. Unable to lie or make excuses anymore.
After all this, I can't continue our marriage. I'm divorcing you. Please sign the divorce papers right now. You'll also have to pay alimony.
Michelle declared, placing the divorce papers on the table. Henry shook his head, refusing to sign.
Henry! You think you can say no at this point? You brought this on yourself. Sign it!
Ken yelled. Unable to resist, Henry signed under our watchful eyes.
And sign this too,
Michelle said, handing over a document for a generous alimony and child support. Henry reluctantly signed, but then his attitude changed completely.
Don't get too happy just because I signed some papers. What are you saying now? Listen up. I'm a famous person. My work sells for a lot. I have value. If you had just obeyed me, you could have enjoyed the benefits too.
Henry's outburst was unstoppable.
You'll regret cutting ties with me. You'll come crawling back when you're poor and need money. I'll marry my mistress. I don't care about you anymore.
With that, Henry grabbed his phone and computer and left our house. An awkward silence filled the room.
I'm so sorry. How could he turn out like this?
I couldn't help but cry. Even though Michelle and her parents were the real victims.
But honestly, divorcing Henry is the right decision. Michelle is a wonderful person, she'll find someone better.
It's not about that. But I'm really glad I met you. If it's okay with you, I'd like to maintain the same relationship as before.
Michelle's kindness made me feel even more guilty. But then, her father asked us a favor.
Actually, we have a request. Our place is far, and Michelle isn't fully recovered. She also has work. Could you please help take care of her and the baby?
We were more than willing.
Of course, don't hesitate to ask us for anything. We'll treat Michelle like our own daughter.
Everyone laughed, relieving the tension. Michelle's mother and the baby came into the living room. We spent time talking about the baby and enjoying their company.
If only Henry realized that happiness isn't about money. He's such a fool. Actually, we were the ones who had been helping him get work. I didn't know that. Yes, but we'll stop that now. He won't be able to work as he used to.
Michelle's father's words turned out to be true. Without their help, Henry's work opportunities plummeted. But he was too proud to ask us for help. He went on to marry his mistress and had a grand wedding. However, the divorce and his dealings got leaked online, and he faced a huge backlash. When I saw it on the news, I asked Henry if he was okay. He blamed us for the leak and cut ties with us. It didn't end there. It turned out the child of his mistress wasn't his. It was probably thought that sticking with Henry, who earned a lot of money, would be safe. Ironically, he ended up being cuckolded. Henry's work, once highly regarded, was no longer valued, and his contracts with various companies were terminated one after the other, leaving him with a hefty amount of penalties to pay. Moreover, his careless handling of tax matters led to further reprimands, and he ended up with a massive debt. I wanted to help Henry multiple times, but Ken stopped me. I understand how you feel, but this is his trial. He needs to overcome this, or he'll just repeat the same mistakes. It was clear, though, that Ken was worried about Henry. With nowhere else to turn, Henry would come to our house, claiming his right as the grandfather of the child. However, I made the tough decision not to let him in. He then resorted to shouting outside our house, "Michelle, I was wrong. Let's make up. Let me take care of the child as his father." He was so persistent that Ken eventually had to call the police to drive him away. Thinking of the worst-case scenario, Michelle quit her job and went back to her parents' house with the baby. Henry gave up and returned to his mistress, who appeared to be quite free-spirited. But he endured, unable to make matters worse in public. In addition to that, he was living in poverty due to his debts. When Michelle learned that Henry wasn't coming around anymore, she started visiting us with the baby, enjoying gardening and cooking together. We grew even closer to Michelle's parents and now often go on trips together. We're looking forward to visiting a tourist spot on our next holiday. Despite everything that's happened, we're living very happily now. My name is Rachel, and I'm 38 years old. I got divorced 6 years ago and remarried 3 years back. Me, my first hubby Dan, and my current hubby, Louis, we all worked together at Smith Foods. Dan and Louis were like oil and water, always competing, but they both really gave their all for the company. After me and Dan decided to tie the knot, I quit my job. The next year, our little girl Julie came into our world. Our marriage was like a fairy tale, at least for the first 5 years. Then things started to go south. Dan fell head over heels for a gal 10 years his junior, named Natalie. He hardly ever came home, and it tore me up. Eventually, I decided to divorce him. I've been a single mom to Julie ever since. While Dan was off with his new flame, Louis, bless his heart, reached out to me worried. We started talking, not just about Dan, and before we knew it, we ended up tying the knot. Louis never let on that he was the big boss's son at the office. I didn't have a clue until after we got married. Turns out, my second marriage was like hitting the jackpot. Julie and I have been living the high life. Not long ago, we went skiing in Switzerland. Poor Julie had an accident and now she's in a wheelchair. While I was dropping her off at school, I saw someone at the gate. It was Dan. My ex, who left me for another woman 6 years ago. Thought remarriage was a miracle for you. But look at you now, back to a life of misery. It's almost funny. Then Louis rolls up in his fancy car, and Dan's face just goes white as a sheet.
What? Louis? Driving such a fancy car?
Louis is the son of the president of Smith Foods. He's about to become the youngest president in the company's history. Talk about a plot twist, huh? I wanted to share the life journey that led me to this point of happiness.
The company's huge, isn't it? Didn't seem this big when we first interviewed?
It's a long-standing food company. It's still growing and listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
Dan, Louis, and I joined Smith Foods and were assigned to the PR department. On our first day, Dan wouldn't stop talking, and we planned to grab some drinks to get to know each other better.
Man, your French is incredible.
My dad's background is French. I was born and raised right here in the US.
Rachel, I heard you're also fluent in French. Did you grow up abroad?
I've always been fond of French. I studied it more in the Global Studies program at college.
Wow, I can't speak a lick of it, but somehow I still got hired. Guess I'm lucky.
Being in the same starting group, me, Dan, and Louis would often go out for drinks. We got pretty close. But Dan, getting greedier by the day, started to see Louis as his rival.
Doesn't it seem like Louis is the boss's pet? He's even on the cover of our PR magazine. Sure, he's good-looking with a tall stature. I can give him that. But a regular employee, acting like a model? And he's always in the spotlight at work, like he's the face of the company. If they gave me a chance, I could outdo him. I don't want to lose to him, not in work, not in anything. I don't think Louis cares about winning or losing. He's just doing what's asked of him. He even said he's tired of being judged by his looks alone. Do you and Louis ever go out for drinks, just the two of you? Well, if he invites me.
Around this time, it seems Dan started to have feelings for me. I had a sense of it but pretended not to notice as there were no clear words or actions from him. The three of us, Dan, Louis, and I, grew closer both at work and in our private lives, inspiring and challenging each other. 2 years after joining Smith Foods, Dan asked me out.
What should I do? How should I respond?
Maybe I was being the villain here, but I talked to Louis about Dan.
If you don't dislike him, why not go out with him? I respect Dan and think he's a good guy. He could make you happy.
Dan was a man of intense but transient passions. His tendency to get completely absorbed in something was somewhat frightening. But I gave an honest okay to Dan, who had expressed his feelings directly. Dan and I got married when we were 25. I left my job to focus on family life. It's a shame you're leaving. You had the potential to be a career woman. You're always attentive to details others miss, finishing tasks before they're even requested. It's really a waste.
Thank you. You're the only one who appreciates me that way.
Contact me anytime if you need anything. Though, I think Dan will take good care of you. If he ever cheats, I'll be right there to give him a piece of my mind.
Louis said lightly, a statement I would come to remember.
Dan, if you're going to be late, at least let me know. Dinner's going to waste.
Stop nagging.
It's because of your constant complaining that I don't want to come home.
Don't forget, Julie has her school play tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
I've got plans, but I can't make them.
What? I told you to keep your schedule free ages ago. Julie's looking forward to you being there.
6 years into our marriage. Our daughter Julie is now 5. The once doting father, Dan, had changed completely. I wondered what caused it. Was it because he knew I was aware of his affair? Dan was boldly enjoying his time with his mistress. This mistress was a piece of work, shamelessly bragging and belittling me, his wife.
Oh, tomorrow's your mistress's birthday, right? You withdrew savings for a brand accessory gift, didn't you? I saw her bragging about it on social media. Her family's wealthy, right? Her dad's a company president? So why are you spoiling her? Are you being played?
It's creepy how you snoop around.
I got this information from a junior at Smith Foods, Bob, who had taken a liking to me and admired me. Dan was apparently proud of having a mistress. He blabbered and boasted about things I didn't even ask.
I heard you met her at her cafe at the station. She was so cute that you gave her your number, hoping for a chance. And she contacted you first, right? That woman, either she's not used to attention or she's overly confident. And she's just in her 20s, right? I doubt she's serious about you. I'm not a lost cause yet.
Dan declared defiantly, choosing to be open rather than hide.
So, you frequented her cafe every day, and it paid off. Don't you realize you get too obsessed with one thing and lose sight of everything else? I've always been devoted. Did you know your mistress has been harassing me? It's pretty serious slander. If I take this to a lawyer, it could be a legal case. She's posting on my social media, calling me horrible names, accusing me of not doing housework, of cheating. She's spreading lies. The other moms at Julie's kindergarten have seen it, and now they treat me like a pariah. If this continues, I'm going to take action. Reacting to such trivial stuff and getting all worked up? Are you a child? Stop making a fuss, it's tiring. I'm going to take a shower and sleep.
But the situation worsened. Rachel? It's me, Louis. Out of the blue, I received a call from Louis. It had been a while since I heard his voice, as I had left my job for family life. And Dan rarely spoke about work, let alone about Louis.
Louis! It's been a while. How are you?
Actually, Dan has been absent without notice for the past few days. I was wondering if he's sick or something.
Dan hadn't been coming home for the last few days, and now he wasn't even showing up at work. But I couldn't bring myself to tell Louis about this embarrassing situation.
Well, yeah, maybe he's not feeling well. Sorry about that. I'll make sure he contacts the office. Are you okay?
Louis asked, his concern almost bringing me to tears. I wanted to confide everything in him. To have someone sympathize and comfort me.
If it's going to be a long absence, I really need him to let us know. Right now, Dan, me, and 3 others are handling a big project. He is the group leader. Honestly, we can't proceed without him. I'm sorry for the trouble he's causing everyone. I guess he'll have to step down from this project then, if it's holding things up. I'll pass the message to Dan,
I said, realizing the severity of the impact on his work. I felt helpless, knowing there was nothing more I could do. I tried calling Dan, though I expected no answer. My emails were being ignored, and the phone calls went unanswered.
Hello?
To my surprise, it wasn't Dan, but his mistress who answered.
Oh, it's his wife. Dan's in the shower, Can't come to the phone. Do you have a message for him? Is my husband staying at your place? Yeah, he stays here most of the time, occasionally at a hotel, but mostly at my place. Are you keeping him from going to work? Are you the possessive type? Dan's planning to quit his current job for a new opportunity.
What? I haven't heard anything about that.
Maybe he can't be honest with you? He says you're scared when you're angry. He told me he's often left wandering the streets at night because you won't let him in.
She was spouting all sorts of things, lies Dan had probably told her to make it seem like their marriage was failing. A typical tactic of an unfaithful husband.
My father owns a business. Dan's going to take over as president soon. It's a great opportunity he wouldn't want to miss. Men want to be at the top, don't they? That's something you couldn't give him. I can make him a president. That's part of my charm.
Her father's business, a cafe, was just a small shop in front of the station. They were planning to expand into a chain. But I wondered if becoming president of such a business was really what Dan wanted, given his aspirations when we first joined Smith Foods.
Why don't you just file for divorce? Dan doesn't come home or go to work, so what's the point of staying married?
It's not that simple. We have a daughter, Julie. Are you the one keeping Dan from coming home?
What? No way.
He approached me first, and I reluctantly responded. I'm with him because he listens to me. I wasn't planning to marry, but my dad was looking for a successor. Dan just happened to be there. He's lucky, isn't he? Getting to marry someone 10 years younger and become a president.
Of course, he wouldn't want to go back to you. I could almost see her smug face. I had checked her social media. She was the typical influencer type, flaunting her lavish lifestyle with branded goods. She's deliberately posting with the prices included. It seems like she's being supported by young women who aspire to be like Natalie.
Sorry to bother you again. Today, Dan's agent contacted me. He wants to resign. Probably hired one of those famous resignation services. It's kind of unmanly for him, isn't it? So, he's officially resigned, but what are you planning to do with him?
It's likely going to end in divorce.
Divorce? It's come to that?
The truth is, Dan doesn't plan to come home anymore. He's been at his mistress's place for almost a month, no contact, not coming home.
What? It's gotten that bad? That's serious.
Divorcing now, when my daughter Julie is just about to start school, would hurt her, wouldn't it? I tried to envision us getting back together, but it's impossible now. Dan has completely moved on to his mistress.
Dan has always been the type to forge ahead once he makes up his mind, not listening to others.
That's why I think he left everything behind to be with her, kind of like eloping.
If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. Since then, I often found myself turning to Lewis for advice. Even on the day I signed the divorce papers, I instinctively called him.
I'm disappointed in Dan. He always said he would never cheat. Aren't you about the age to start thinking about marriage? Don't you have someone special? No, not really. I think I'm okay with getting married around 40. I don't have any particular desire or ideal vision of marriage.
He was as handsome in character as he was in looks. Popular but never boastful or arrogant. I was genuinely curious about what kind of woman Lewis would eventually marry. Even after my divorce from Dan was finalized, I kept getting updates from my junior, Bob. He loved gossip and was known as Smith Foods' very own entertainment reporter.
I'm so tired. What's for dinner tonight?
Order delivery. I'm tired too. I heard that Dan, now married to his mistress Natalie, was struggling. He had been handed the reins of the cafe, her father's business, and was already facing difficulties. Dan had initially been enthusiastic about turning the business around, but he couldn't fully commit to the job, finding it uninteresting.
Tired? That's because you've been out and about, not doing housework. You wanted to do it perfectly and even stopped working at the shop, but in the end, you didn't do anything. I'm only 22, you know? My friends are still single. I'm not going to be tied down at home.
Their marriage was clearly not going well. 3 years after my divorce from Dan and his marriage to Natalie, they were still together, albeit unhappily.
Wow, here?
Julie was understandably surprised. I was even more so. Julie and I were standing in front of Lewis's family mansion, having been invited over. The house was enormous.
Hey, welcome.
Lewis greeted us warmly, his charm just as evident in private. Meeting Lewis's parents and having a pleasant conversation with them, it suddenly dawned on me.
Your father is from Smith Foods, right? You didn't use the Smith surname. Was it to avoid being known as the president's son?
I couldn't just become the president overnight. I wanted to start from the ground up, to understand what our employees go through. My dad still says I have a lot to learn. I'm really sorry for keeping it a secret until now.
No way, this is like hitting the jackpot. Lewis had recently proposed to me, and today I was meeting his parents to officially announce our engagement.
I feel so honored that you would marry someone like me, a divorced woman with a daughter.
Why are you being so formal? Just be your usual self, Rachel. Lewis lightened the mood, and we spent the day with smiles. Lewis had always been there to listen and advise me during the rough patch with Dan. Our growing closeness seemed inevitable. My biggest concern about remarrying was Julie. Would she need a new dad?
Why does Lewis have to leave? Why can't he just stay with us?
Julie had asked earlier. It seemed that her memories with Dan were being replaced by those with Lewis, elevating his place in her heart. Then one day, Julie called Lewis Dad and expressed her wish for him to be her father. That's how Lewis and I started preparing for our marriage.
What? Rachel and Lewis getting married?
That was Dan's initial reaction when our junior colleague Bob, a gossip lover, told him about our wedding.
When did this happen?
Rachel doesn't like guys like Lewis.
She used to say he's too skinny and unreliable.
She needs someone like me who goes to the gym.
We're complete opposites.
Rachel's taste in men is so inconsistent. She just goes for any guy who says he likes her. She's not even that pretty, and she's got a kid, and she's in her mid-30s. A younger, prettier woman without a kid is obviously better.
What is Lewis thinking?
With his looks and brains, why a divorced woman with a child?
What's his angle?
They'll break up soon, maybe in 3 years. Me and Natalie?
Dan was evasive when it came to his own affairs. But Bob skillfully managed to draw the conversation out.
After all, even though it's a small cafe, people say the prices are high. The coffee taste isn't that bad either. That's why I've kept the prices high, but the customers don't seem to understand. They wonder why good drinks can't be cheap. But the scale is just too different. I used to work for Smith Foods, a big food company, you know? Dealing with a coffee for $5 each, that's just small fry. And about Natalie, are things going well with her?
Since the beginning of the marriage, there was an uneasy atmosphere, but it has somehow lasted for 3 years.
Things aren't going well with Natalie. She's young, with a wide social circle, and won't listen to me. Her parents just dumped the failing business on me and turned a blind eye.
We're like a couple in name only.
I tend to get obsessed and then lose interest quickly. Natalie can't leave me now that I've taken over her father's failing business. She should be grateful to me, but we barely have a marriage. No housework, no marital life. A housekeeper? Impossible, her family isn't that rich. Just because someone calls themselves a president doesn't mean they're wealthy.
I was astounded by how freely he talked to a junior colleague. Hearing such complaints about his wife and work made me even angrier. Dan was clearly upset about my happy life with Lewis. He hadn't accepted the fact that I was remarrying Lewis. Then, 3 years later,
there's something important I need to discuss.
I got a sudden call from Dan. It had been about a year since I last heard from him.
I'd like to see Julie at least once a month. I can't afford a lawyer, so I want to talk to you directly.
His sudden interest in Julie seemed too convenient. He never mentioned wanting to see her in the past 6 years. Probably some trouble with Natalie made him think of Julie. I later found out that at this time, Dan was under a lot of pressure both at work and at home. I'll have to ask Julie.
She barely remembers you as her dad since you separated before she started elementary school.
She's close to Louis now. If she says no, you'll have to accept that.
What does Julie say about me?
Why would she talk about you? You think too highly of yourself. When I asked Julie, she didn't want to see Dan. I told him her honest answer.
Is that really what Julie said? Or are you making her say that? Or maybe you're lying to me.
What can I do to make you believe me? After I said that, Dan was left speechless. For a while, there was no contact from him, so I thought he had given up on meeting Julie. Yet, today, he was lurking at the gate of Julie's elementary school. Julie was in a wheelchair, and Dan mistakenly assumed she was disabled. She had injured herself skiing on our recent trip to Switzerland and was using the wheelchair just until she recovered. But Dan made a very rude comment about it.
What's all this commotion?
Louis arrived in a luxury car to drop off Julie.
Why such a fancy car? Louis, really?
Louis is the son of the president of Smith Foods. He's set to take over as president soon.
What? Louis is the president's son? He never hinted at that. Why did he keep it a secret from us? Was it because he thought we would act differently around the president's son? That's just arrogance. Even changing his name. He should have worked at another company if he wanted to start from the bottom. If he doesn't have the guts for that, he shouldn't be president. Louis is too soft.
Dan ranted, seizing the opportunity to complain about Louis. Even when we were married, he always bad-mouthed Louis. What are you doing here? If you don't have business, please leave.
I can call the police for suspicious behavior.
You're just showing off because Rachel's here. You don't look good at all.
I'll excuse myself then.
I came to see Julie.
She's my child, I have the right to see her.
I already told you, Julie doesn't want to meet you.
Whether that's true or not.
And I don't want her to meet you either. You chose your mistress over a still young Julie. I think you're unclean for that reason. You barely attended Julie's kindergarten events. Do you have any idea how lonely she felt? Do you know what she said the first time she wore her school backpack? She wondered if you would be happy to see her. After that day, she stopped talking about you completely.
I said, holding back tears.
I not only worked a day job, but I also worked as a web writer from home to ensure an income. I was so busy with housework that I hardly had time to talk with Julie. I made her feel lonely too.
So that's why you married wealthy Louis.
I didn't even know Louis's father was the president until we decided to get married. I was drawn to Louis's kindness and warmth. Even if he weren't the president's son, I would have married him.
You and Louis have been together since you joined the company as new employees, weren't you?
This kind of thinking is pointless. He's just trying to find a loophole to gain an advantage because he's at a disadvantage.
Now that I think about it, there are a lot of things that make sense. She just happened to start dating and then marry me when she was having a little fight with Louis.
Maybe that's the real story, huh?
That's a far-fetched story. We have nothing to be ashamed of in our relationship.
Just a man chaser, huh? You always pick men from the same circle. Married 2 guys from the same PR department you joined. You should broaden your horizons.
And what about your marriage? Married a girl 10 years younger, abandoning Julie. She's probably tired of you by now. That's typical for you, isn't it? Happy just to win someone over, but then you lose interest. The classic once you've caught the fish, you don't feed it mindset.
This conversation is a waste of time. I'm leaving. Running away, huh? Figures, you can't have an equal conversation with me. I'm not interested in small fry. I heard your rice ball shop is in trouble. Good luck with your presidency. I have bigger business goals in mind than a $5 coffee.
In the end, Louis had the last word. I got emotional too. Dan's greatest punishment for abandoning everything for his mistress was that he would never see his own daughter again. And as Louis said, Dan's cafe went bankrupt. Dan, now the president, was saddled with debt. He had been tricked into taking over Natalie's father's failing business. Dan was deceived because of his own ulterior motives. Natalie, having found a new boyfriend, left him and filed for divorce. Then came a happy event for me. I was pregnant with Louis's child. Though it was a late pregnancy, both Louis and I were overjoyed. His parents were happy about that. And Julie was thrilled, which comforted me. I don't regret marrying Dan. After all, he gave me Julie, the greatest treasure.